Hey, buddy.
Whoa, there he is.
I am here.
How are you?
Computer up. Sorry, we left Jarvis in his crate all day, so I mean, that's kind of normal when Catherine goes into the office, but he's out on a walk right now, and we're freaking out.
Wow. I mean, we walk outside for 2 seconds and come in, the dog loses its mind. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, how's it feel to be done with months and months of training?
Honestly, so good. I can't even tell you. And still sort of surreal. Oh, I see that you messaged, you emailed the group.
Yeah,
Pod is live.
there you go.
Pod is live in our chat as well. Hello, Pod audience. Pod audience.
I'm sure Paul will be in the chat soon to provide his live commentary.
Let me step away for 1 second.
Yeah, take your time.
Haha! Elevated blog platform. Odd. What is new in dad life? You look sleep deprived. Sleep regression.
A little bit.
Tell me about
it.
Yeah,
sleep regression is real. I'm sure the other fathers that watch this will attest to it. Basically, what happens is as babies are growing, periodically they'll essentially take like a step or two back in how they sleep, particularly at night, and impacts like their full day routine. So instead of sleeping maybe let's say going to bed at like 8 o'clock to wake up at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. to feed or something like that, instead now it's like I go to bed and I want to wake up at midnight, and then I want to wake up at 3, and then I want to wake up at 6. It's just kind of like the whole day is that pattern. So they essentially regress. They want to eat more often. It generally can coincide with like a growth spurt, which we think he's been through. But yeah, it's pretty rough because it can last weeks, and you really can't do a whole lot other than cope and try to do what you can each day, and they just eventually grow back out of it. But yeah, last night was really rough, and tonight feels like it's going to be pretty rough. So.
Oh no, dude. How long would you say you're getting at any one length of time in terms of sleep? The light is much better.
Oh, much. Oh my God. Now we can see you. Yeah. It's before the sleep regression, I might be able to get 6 or 7 hours because he would it's not like I was falling asleep when he fell asleep. So if he goes to sleep at 8:30 and I'm up till like 10 or 10:30, I'm still getting, maybe 6 hours, 5-6 hours. He slept through the night a couple nights in a row, and then right before the sleep regression, so we got a full night's sleep. But now it's like a couple hours, and then you wake up. Even if you don't get up, and the other person gets up, like you wake up, you have to. He's in the room like screaming. So it's tough, but you just kind of have to brute force your way through it. So, but it's great.
Sounds great. It sounds great. Is what it sounds like. Great.
Yeah. It's like everyone says, the best birth control is taking care of a baby. But
Kim doing?
She's good. I mean, it's tough. It's tough for her. She's a really light sleeper, so it's hard for her to like every noise he makes. And to me, it's like unless he's crying, I'm not waking up. You'll never sleep. So it's really tough because the sleep regression makes it hard. We're in the habit of like I would get up in the middle of the night, and so she could sleep more because she needs more sleep than I do to function. And now we're deteriorating quickly, but he'll be all right. Another week or so, hopefully he'll be through it, and then be good for a little while. So.
Well, that part's good.
But yeah, what about you though? You don't have a screaming baby in another room. So.
No, it's me with the sleep regression. It's me. And that's everything's fair. Good. It's nice to be back from that training hellhole that is Southern Virginia. And my very first 2 cases back are both likely going to grand jury indictments and a bunch of arrest warrants. So that's
awesome.
Fun. But word on the street is you recently deposed an FBI agent. What's the story there?
Yeah, it's not terribly exciting, but he did rear end our client. So we are suing the federal government, which is its own
Oh, was he in his work
can of
car?
worms. Yeah, he was in his work car on duty on assignment. So
Ah,
I wasn't permitted to inquire as to the nature of the assignment or what was happening, but it was a little interesting because initially we were trying. It was all on Zoom, and he was in a undisclosed facility that they're not allowed to have wireless devices.
yeah.
And I was like, so
Most of our
how?
workspaces
It's
are
like
like that.
right. So it's like how are we going to do this Zoom deposition? So we had to wait about a half an hour for them to expedite some government red tape to put him in a room with a video camera and video conferencing type situation with some associate counsel next to him and his the U.S. attorney on Zoom and everything. So not
Oh
exciting,
no,
but it was a little interesting.
that's
He
crazy. So, I mean, your client sort of cashed in, I would imagine, because I will
I
just
mean,
say that one of our bigger fears, not personally but institutionally, is often, um, well, we'll just say the government is widely believed to have very deep pockets.
yeah, well, so it falls under the Federal Tort Claims Act, which this is going to get really nerdy very
Yeah, it
quickly,
means
but
that you can't sue the person; you can only sue the government.
yeah, you can't sue like the FBI. You sue like the United States government, and it's
Oh,
so.
okay.
What it also means is that, oh
People
my
pay me
God,
stand a lot.
there you go, Jarvis. Um, is that you're limited to recover what you demand pre-suit, but of course you demand pre-suit a much higher amount than you might um, otherwise receive because you wouldn't negotiate against yourself. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it's a very simple liability case, and he admitted that he was distracted immediately before uh, the accident occurred. That he struck the vehicle from behind.
Oh,
Nothing like hit him to push him into the vehicle. So we don't really have a reason to. They don't. The government did not admit liability, but I don't imagine, are going to contest it too much. But it's the government, so there's not like theoretically they could just spend whatever they want to challenge the case. But I think we'll probably settle at some point here in the next, you know, 6 months or so. But
wow.
yeah, it's interesting. It's like federal court, um, you know, so it's very interesting to get like the redacted, unclassified, FBI like investigation report for like the accident and everything. But
Does
it's
this
not.
mean that Judge Lowell will be able to practice in federal court as well?
I already practice in federal court. I'm allowed to
Well, yeah,
practice in
but I
federal
mean,
courts.
by judging, by in judgmentship.
No, not me, but there'll be a magistrate judge who we've agreed to that will preside over the case if we get to a bench trial. But we won't go that far. I mean,
I don't think so.
the injuries aren't terribly significant, but I don't get to pick who hits my client. But I'll take the government. There's no insurance limit there.
Yeah,
So
I recently heard about a case that is similarly not going to trial, where someone admitted a whole bunch of things. Um, this is very probably too vague to be of interest to a pod audience, but where a person who may have otherwise had a fighting chance at a trial uh, might not have realized they were walking down a road of liability and admitted a whole bunch of things up front. And so now they won't have to go through a trial because they shouldn't.
well, you know, that's all right. So yeah, it was interesting. It's an interesting afternoon. You know, uh,
So,
you know.
as commissioner, where do you want to begin on the hottest
Mhm.
takes in all of the
So
league?
we have to start with what is your take on Kanye West showing up unannounced this afternoon with a film crew at the Skechers headquarters one day after Adidas dropped him?
I did not know about this. Tell me more,
Okay.
and I'll give you a
So
hot take.
so Adidas, right, is a German company originally created by Nazis. Okay, many decades ago, right? Obviously, not recently. Kanye West's recent comments,
Familiar with
anti-Semitic
that?
comments,
Familiar with
right? We're
that?
all familiar with that, right?
It was, in fact, our local freeway here, the 405, where people are hanging posters saying Kanye was right. And Fun fact, Kanye was wrong.
Right. So the more interesting fact is that Skechers is owned by was owned and created by a Jewish family. So Kanye West, anti-Semitic comments and all, today showed up trying to get a new sneaker deal with a Jewish-run company after being dropped by a originally Nazi-created shoe company or apparel company. So it really does. It's really come full circle for Mr. West. Yee,
Yeah, Mr.
as some people
West
know him.
needs to sail off to the west and never be heard from again.
Yeah. So, but we can transition to football. You, the owner of Christian McCaffrey, how do you feel having? I guess the trade came at an interesting point. He goes to the Niners, doesn't do a whole lot, but he only practiced for 1 hour, and the Carolina running backs run all over Tampa, and then you get run all over by me. So, how did you feel with the McCaffrey trade?
Well, I will take this as 3 different matters.
Topics. Yeah.
These are 3 different topics to discuss. First and foremost, when the owners of the Panthers and the Niners and myself agreed to trade Christian McCaffrey, I was fully supportive, and I'm glad they took my advice on the exchange. I believe that he will have an equally standout role on the Niners as he had with the Panthers, and with better weapons around him to make it less tempting for opposing defenses to focus in on him, shut him down, and force Carolina to try other inferior options. Whereas on the Niners, especially when everybody gets back to being healthy, he can be an elite where you also can't ignore the other options on the team. And I think that will not take away, I think, from his productivity. I will, switching a little bit to your second topic, but I want to hear your take on the CMAC trade in the beginning. I was absolutely fucking blown away when the Bucks defense crumpled under the feckless, historically underperforming, completely forgettable Carolina offense without CMAC. So I don't understand what happened. I, as you know, but others watching may not know, I had the Tampa defense this week. I've had them most weeks, and I was excited for their matchup against Carolina, and I was even more excited for their matchup against Carolina when they traded away CMAC. I figured if there was any shot of beating you, a significant portion of that was going to have to come, or at least a disproportionate amount compared to a normal week of a defense, would have to come from that defense shutting down Carolina. I thought it had the potential for a shutout. What's your take? Clearly, that's not what
happened. No, clearly it's not. I think as a Niner fan, my worry is, will McCaffrey go the way of all the other Niner running backs of the last couple of years with Shanahan, where they all get hurt? At some point, they all get hurt. Whether it was Mostert, whether it's been Jeff Wilson before, Elijah Mitchell, God knows who else, right? It could be for McCaffrey, an amazing player when he's healthy. My concern is the Niners just are every year we go, oh, they have all these injuries. Well, if it happens year after year, there's something systemic going on, in my opinion. So I worry about that. And I also worry about Jimmy G just being terrible and throwing a ball to McCaffrey in some way, and then he gets laid out by a defender and he's out for a month with a concussion or a broken arm or something. I have those kinds of concerns, because from an offensive perspective, it should work wonderfully. You pair an explosive, athletic running back with
who's a dual threat and can also line up as a receiver.
Right. He can catch 100 passes if you want to throw that much to him. You've got Debo who can do everything. Kittle who can block and catch and do a lot. And Ayuk who, you have some weapons to go deep. It should work wonderfully. And Shanahan should scheme up some ridiculous looking plays and some crazy explosive plays. But it's, right now it's quarterbacked by Jimmy Garoppolo. So I'm very tepid in my confidence going forward this season because the ceiling with Jimmy Garoppolo is elimination in the
I
playoffs.
think that would be true if he were an elite receiver, but I think barring injury concerns, which is a legitimate concern,
Mhm.
the benefit with McCaffrey is if Jimmy Garoppolo completely shits the bed and decides to just hand it off every down, like we've seen from some teams this season, I think that could benefit McCaffrey too. And he has the athleticism, if he's healthy, to break out, use that San Francisco
Mhm.
offensive line that is so much better than Carolina's to his
Mhm.
advantage, use Kittle to his
Yeah.
advantage, and benefit from that as a runner. But
Yeah.
who
I
knows?
mean, look, the possibilities are endless from an offensive standpoint. It's a matter of execution and health. I think that's the biggest thing, and you can't predict those elements. So, for the Niners, yes, make the trade, go for it. You might as well. Here's a player who's local kid, went to Stanford. Shanahan's known him since they were basically children. Like, good, go for it. But it's easy to in a vacuum. It looks great, but we have to see what it looks like out there on the field. And Shanahan, sometimes he gets a little too cute. That's what I worry about is that we get a little too cute, with
A little
something.
too creative in the play calling and the play drawing.
Yeah, sometimes you're a genius, but it doesn't mean that you know how to rein yourself in. So we'll see. I think it's great. I think for you, there's incredible potential going forward as he gets more ingrained and assimilated into the offense. He should be really interesting to watch because you're right. They can't stack the box against him because of the other weapons. And similarly, that should allow Debo and Kittle and McCaffrey to all be really good as long as Jimmy's competent, which, a lot of alcohol consumed sometimes watching Jimmy G. So
I do have a question before we move on,
sure.
because I think where we're headed probably is kind of taking in where every team is in the season at this halfway point. Before we do that, I have a question for you. If you haven't seen it, because you've been dealing with that sleep deprivation, I'm curious for your opinion. I made a last-minute ad drop on my team moments before joining the pod tonight, moments before we started our connection here. I dropped my backup quarterback, famous piece of shit Marcus Mariota, for the slightly higher upside mediocre quarterback Andy Dalton.
I saw it.
Has just been named today as the official starter on Sunday for the Saints. With, if I remember correctly, a pretty weak, opposing defense in the Raiders. What's your take?
Look, I've always been a fan of the Red Rifle. Okay, Jameis pre or post LASIK surgery is simply not that accurate. Look, for you, if you're looking for a bye week fill in for Mahomes, I think Dalton is likely going to be in a game that's a shootout that he has to put up a lot of points at home against the Raiders. Raiders offense is playing really well under McDaniel, so I like it. I think it's a smart move. Mariota, unless he's running into the end zone, is just not worth it. Yeah. You're just entirely dependent on rushing touchdowns because they barely throw the ball. It's a terrible offense. The Red Rifle, at least there's upside. He's probably not going to go out there and throw 2 or 3 picks, but it's a question of, does he throw for like 250 and a couple touchdowns? Yeah, this week, probably. I think it's a smart pickup. So yeah, I'm on board with it. I don't see too much downside. Yeah, but you only need it 1 week.
As maybe a transition into this halfway point of the league and kind of taking stock of where everybody's at. I'd like to start, since I'm usurping at the moment as host, I would like to start by asking you where you think not where you're at now. Obviously, you're the last remaining undefeated team. You are inevitably in the number 1 spot in the league at the moment. Do you believe that you can remain undefeated through the regular season? And how does this set up the playoff picture?
Well, that's sort of 2 questions. Do I think I can go undefeated? Yes. The hardest stretch that I foresaw was the last 3 weeks playing, having to go through you, Joe, and Paul in between, but mostly you and Joe. I thought if I could at least win 1, if not 2 of those, I felt pretty good about having an inside track to a bye. Having gone undefeated in that stretch, I feel really good. namely because I'd have to lose. Well, I'd have to lose at least twice, and then probably have both of those losses be in division to lose a bye at this point. 3 games ahead of you, 2 games ahead of La Magna with a head-to-head win. So I feel pretty good in terms of going undefeated. Yeah, I feel pretty confident. Weeks 10 and 11 will be tough. That's when I have a large amount of skill players on bye. There's a chance that Andrews doesn't play tomorrow night, but I've won a couple weeks in a row here, not fielding full lineup, so I'm okay with that. I'll take the risk. So I feel pretty good that there's a chance to go undefeated and be the first ever undefeated team in the regular season. And in terms of the playoffs, I don't really see a way. I'll put it this way. Unless I fall to the 2 seed, I think I have the hardest road in the playoffs because it'll be interesting. The right now, LaMagna's team is really good and has overperformed, and he's made some trades, so he's got a very strong team. But he's going to be the 4 seed. It's probably unlikely he drops any lower than the 5, and so the 1 seed is going to get matched up with the 4-5 winner, and that's going to be tough compared to if you're the 2 seed or the 3 seed. You know, it's you or Joe, let's say, right, or it's Joe and your division winner. We can talk about that in a little bit.
I don't think that. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Go on.
So like if you're Joe, and if let's say Joe beats you and Joe feels confident in that matchup, that feels like an easier path because you essentially have to win one maybe moderately difficult matchup versus one really difficult matchup to make it to the championship. So, it's interesting. I feel good about getting the bye. I feel pretty good about being undefeated because weeks 10 and 11, I play Tates and I play Kirshner, and I got enough depth. I should be able to get by those teams. So I like my chances, but I still got to play Drew and Matt one more time, and they're both really good. And so there's definitely a chance I lose, but I'd say like 50-50 that I go undefeated.
So I would say I much reluctantly agree with you. I would think your biggest threat there is probably your matchup with Matt, who has had some of these big explosive games. I am very concerned for my own team in weeks 10 and 11 because it's Joe and then Matt. Yeah, Joe and then Matt back to back. So your team has probably been consistently, I'm looking at what you have on the board now. You have the highest points for by a mile. But interestingly, you also have the lowest points against in the top tier of the league.
Sure. I mean, but I think while that's, one way to look at it.
Very unwillingly contributed to this past week.
Well, no, I mean, it's really that mark is really buoyed significantly or dragged down significantly because when I played Manny, he's put up 64 points. So that number is significantly lower. I mean, if you think Joe put up 135 against me, Jacobs had 114, you put up 105. So it's not as if I've had easy games. But the more, I think, telling statistic is I've had the top scoring team for the last 5 weeks. I haven't scored lower than 6th in a given week. So there's a lot of consistency where my team is at the top. The points against, I think, is more relevant if you think about who are the teams that maybe have had a tougher schedule than maybe they really are. For example, just to look at it in a way, you've had a schedule where you've faced quite a few points, right? You faced 109, almost 110 points against per week. And yeah, you're scoring 118, but that's relatively close where that's kind of a toss up. So in the top half of the league, or the top 3 or 4 teams, that's by far the most points against. So to me, that's more telling of, yes, you're 4-3, but if we look at it in your losses, right, you scored over 100 in every loss.
In all 3 of my losses, I would also argue that if you look at that luck rating, the number of my players who either became injured or dramatically underperformed during a game relative to the complete, and this is not true of the game with you, even though it shows my luck was very low. I had David and Njoku go out with an injury. I had a couple of people vastly underperform, as did you actually last week. You had a 0, I think, out of your tight end.
Yeah, Andrew, man, that was hard to watch.
So,
but I did this.
Yeah.
So I looked at this in anticipation of tonight is if you take those three losses and we look at and give you your optimum score, okay, you would have beaten Tate's, you would have narrowly lost to Jacobs by less than a point, and against me it wouldn't have mattered. So you basically are a 5-2 team, or maybe a 6-1 team who's had some bad luck. I agree with you. You've
Except
had
for
some bad
that
luck.
in those weeks where I think it was week 3,
Mhm.
maybe it was week 4, where I believe it was Taysom Hill on my bench, um, blew up. Is that right? Someone here had a boatload of bench points.
Well, Herbert had huge. That was the game where Montgomery
Yes,
went out.
yes.
And obviously,
So
if you had
again,
known Montgomery was going to get hurt, you would have won, right?
correct.
So if you
And no
make
one
that,
would have
but
played Herbert over Montgomery going into that
right.
matchup.
Well, and it was also the week where Devontae Smith, where both Eagles receivers went off together, and you probably had been bullied a little bit by the pod into not playing them both at the same
Which I
time.
have
And then
done
the
a few
next
times
week,
successfully since then.
well, and the next week you did, and you narrowly lost to Jacobs. And really, the difference here was if you started for whatever reason you benched McCaffrey, and if you had played him,
That was the week where he was questionable until game
mhm,
time, and
yeah,
he had the last game time, if I remember
mhm,
correctly, of anyone. There was no
yeah,
knowing whether he would play at all.
right. And you would have had you put him in instead of Devonta Smith, moved Adams
Yeah,
into the
but I would
receiver
never have
spot.
played him knowing that he was a 50-50 chance at a 0.
Well, of course, right. So that's part of the problem. Is it always is it cuts a little way. So you're right. Luck has certainly played a part, and that's why I think your team is we when we look at it, or when I look at it and I see this is a 4-3 record, it's really a 6-1 team with some bad luck in a couple of spots, or maybe a 5-2 team, depending on how you look at that. You have the second most points for. So, your division is because of that bad luck, your division appears closer than maybe it actually is. So you should still feel confident you have much more talent than Kirshner behind you a game back. But looking at the halfway point, I don't know what sticks out to you. What sticks out to me is as of right now, we have 4 teams from a single division set to be in the playoff. I don't know if that will hold, but it's been interesting to see some of the clear separation. So, halfway through the season, even earlier, where there's 3 or 4 teams that are really dominating and everyone else is sort of trying, is kind of fighting in a race to the bottom. It's, kind of leaving 4, maybe 5 teams to really duke it out for the championship. I don't know what your takeaways are, but that's
Can we
kind of how I
talk
see
briefly
things.
about what has happened to Tates and Bodson this season? I just think the absolute insult of being a worse team than Paul Biedlingmeyer is just, especially this season when we all watched him draft with a mix of tears and laughter.
Yeah, you know, I'll give Paul this, right? Paul doesn't have the worst team in the league, and
No,
he's only got. I mean, he has the 4th fewest points scored, so it's not as if Paul is.
he has not tanked.
He for as much as he's tried to tank, a 5th fewest points scored.
I
You
think it's
know,
helping him that none of us want any of his dog shit players.
well, this is a conversation I had with another owner. It's like, did Paul miss like the window or the boat on like he? And this is something I told Paul like week 2 or 3 was you have too many of these rookies. They're all the same potential value. You have 7 or 8 of them. You can't keep all of them. And now, yeah, did he trade away Kenneth Walker when he shouldn't have? Yeah, probably. Okay, I'll benefit from that. But if he sets like an arbitrarily high price on a player that has no track record.
He
You know,
regularly asks for a second or a third round pick.
right, right. For someone who's maybe after a month of the season, I don't know how to value that versus your own team and what you're going to want or need next year or going forward. So I don't know if he played himself. I think he could easily still benefit,
I think
but
you make a good point that he did indeed play himself because owners in our league, especially who are trading for players to win this season, are not trying to trade for players to win next season.
mhm.
So if you're trying to give away players with keeper potential in return for draft picks, free advice, start selling at a sixth or lower, and start selling to the people who don't need someone right now. Sell to someone else, like someone in the middle. But I want to redirect you back to Bodson and Tates. How has this happened?
I mean, look, I think it's injuries. I think it's bad luck. Um, it's tough. Um, Bodson and Tate's is a very interesting kind of setup because Bodson very quickly, trading away Kelsey, trading away, your best players, one of the elite players in the league very early on. I mean, that really is going to sort of reduce your team to almost nothing. For Tate's, I think Tate's has just had some bad luck.
Yeah.
It's not as if Tate's is out here wheeling and dealing. I mean, he's had the problems of the Rams running backs. Which one did he start? And did they, Sean McVay like them or hate them that week? He's had that problem. Kyle Pitts has been dramatically underperformed. CeeDee Lamb struggles without Dak in the lineup. A lot of his guys have underperformed or struggled for various reasons. And that really makes it difficult because forget keepers, forget who you've picked up. I mean, across the board, if you look at Tate's roster, just as it currently is constructed without, he really hasn't made trades, Lamar's been as expected, more or less. Robinson has had a good start, but then lost his job and was traded. Melvin Gordon has been in and out of the doghouse. CeeDee Lamb has underperformed with the backup quarterback. Deontay Johnson has been mostly terrible because Pittsburgh offense is booty.
Why in the world does he have Kyle Pitts and Evan Ingram both starting?
Well, look at his bench, right? So everyone knows what's going on with Pitts, but look at his bench. You have no confidence to play either Ram running back. Why would you can't play two Denver running backs. You have to at least play Melvin Gordon because he's the starter in name only. James Conner's banged up, but has been disappointing. Michael Thomas has been out for over a month. Allen Robinson's been, terrible. I mean, he doesn't have any options. And unless you want to, there's not like the waivers have some magical solution. And Cordell Patterson's been hurt for a while. So, I mean, if you take this roster, it's just bad.
In a normal season would want to consider trading away the future, but given how bad the record has already gotten for him this season, maybe a matter of just riding it out and trying to pick up some worthwhile waiver keepers.
Maybe. I mean, this is the kind of team that I would say if CeeDee Lamb plays well for a week or two, can trade him for something. Maybe you trade Kyle Pitts, but there's no keeper value because he got taken in the second round. But this is the kind of team that probably goes to Paul and goes, okay, give me one of those rookies for something like a 5th or 6th round pick, and the rookie's a 10th round keeper. This is the kind of team that benefits because I look at this roster and I don't see a keeper. Maybe James Robinson if he pans out with the Jets. I mean, no, 7th. But are you really? Melvin Gordon is the 42nd ranked running back right now.
Fair enough.
What are you supposed to do with that? And next year he's not.
Value that in the 7th or 8th round.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to draft him in the 7th round next year. There's no benefit, right? There's no value added to keeping Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
Right. James Robinson, sure, because if he becomes a starter with the Jets and who knows in the offseason if he stays there, Breece Hall, the injury, there's a lot of unknown. Outside of that, I don't see anything on Tate's roster to go, okay, that's a good keeper. But that's the lineup that should go to someone like Paul and go, hey, Paul, I'll give you, I don't know, Deontay Johnson and like a 7th round pick for, Garrett Wilson or something. I don't know, something like that to get a keeper. And maybe Paul benefits slightly this year because Paul's not actually as bad as we would think from a points perspective.
Very surprised by Paul's performance, but I think more surprised by Tate's. As I agree with you that luck has kind of taken a turn. I feel like I've been in a similar boat as Tate's, with luck taking a turn against me this year on a number of key weeks that I should have won. I believe I lost to JJ in a week that was just bad play, bad performance after bad performance. on my team. I believe that was the week that Montgomery got injured, if I remember correctly.
Uh, I think that was the week after when you played Jacobs, but that was the week, as we talked about earlier, where McCaffrey was a
McCaffrey
game
was
time decision,
yeah.
and you don't start him, and then he goes for 9 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown, and even if whether or not you would have won, you can do the math. I think you might lose by a point, but at least it's close, right? There's still that potential. Maybe it goes your way or not. In a one-off week, like that's fine. But for Tates, it just seems to be happening week
Every
after week
week.
after
And
week.
he's really running out of options with high upside as well. And
Yeah,
the
I
only
just think.
people who have that kind of player, now that like a Travis Kelce has already been traded this season,
Mhm,
I think the only people with those kinds of players are those top four teams, you and I included, who are not willing to give up those players
mhm.
because of the need for them this year.
Yeah, I think the way the league has sort of played itself out in the first half, there's not a lot of elite players left on those bottom half rosters where you go, oh my God, that's what I want. And because certain players have struggled, right? Certain players have underperformed or been hurt. So that has an impact. At the same time, there's been some trades. I think Bodson probably didn't get the full value for the Kelce, particularly that came right after the
Yeah.
4 touchdown Monday night game. But to me, either way, if you're going to make the trade, you make the trade. He got a bunch of future first, so you can't hate it too much. But I think that's kind of how you have to look at it, right? For someone like Bodson, he traded away Dalvin Cook. T. Higgins has been hurt and underperformed. The Kelce trade. Having two Packers running backs has, I think, been a curse, not a blessing. So, things just don't necessarily work out the way you hope.
One thing I will admit to doing extremely strategically poorly, and I can't believe this wasn't on your rundown for this week, but it has to be talked about. It must be talked about.
Okay.
In the week that we all knew Tua was going to be allowed to play again and to start again, I dropped him about a week early without look. So I knew that it wasn't going to affect my matchup last week. And I needed room on the roster, and I knew he was down with a concussion. What I did not do, and I will take full blame for this failure, I did not look ahead to who I would be playing this past Sunday, which was you. The fact that you had no viable quarterback this past Sunday, there was no one available on the waivers whatsoever. I cut Tua, fully aware that he was probably right about to come back, and you picked him up. That didn't make the difference in our matchup because I had
No.
such very bad luck with C-Mac, with Njoku getting hurt. I do think I played it smartly, putting in MVS in as a receiver, even though he was held to 0 touches the week before. But giving you Tua, I notice also we should talk about your tendency not to start a defense. But picking up Tua was a tremendous swing of luck for you, and it would have felt much closer at the outset if you had to go with some waiver wire garbage.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, I was fully prepared, and this is why I thought I would go through this stretch and take the loss, because I was fully prepared to go into this week and play no quarterback and no defense and just let it roll and
Is
just
that
see what
allowed by
happens.
league rules to consistently
Yeah.
not start people? And
Well, I mean, it's not about consistently. I mean, if you have bye weeks and you decide I'm not going to play a kicker because I don't want to pick up another kicker, I mean, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing against that in the sense of I'm not outwardly
where do our
tanking.
rules talk about starting a valid roster? Here's a scandal starting
Mm,
right now. Our commissioner himself
I
violating.
mean, I don't even know if it's a violation. I think it's you have to start a a viable roster in the sense of look while we're talking. But I mean, to I think the idea has to be that you're not tanking, right? I mean,
And you're
it's I
clearly
could
not tanking.
clearly not tanking. I mean, to still win without fielding the full lineup is
Yeah.
is sort of the opposite of tanking. But I was prepared to take the loss, right? Whether no matter what I played or who I played. Um, the starting lineup, it says each team may start up to 9 players within these position requirements. So quarterback, receivers, running backs, tight end, flex, defense, kicker. So that doesn't prevent that type of
Strategic absence.
strategic. I mean, it's again, it's the league rules are more designed to prevent tanking than they are to, to prevent something like that. I mean, it's right. So, for example, it talks about it in terms of the consolation bracket. Teams in the consolation bracket are not allowed to tank and ignore that part of the season. They have to start, basically it's top predicted player at each position or a reasonable lineup based on injuries and matchups. So it's more so, someone can't sort of get to the end of the season and go, I don't care. I want to just tank and end up with the number 2 pick or whatever. So
I would
again,
say that's fair. And I would
I think
say
it's
your
fair.
performance, as much as I regret to say it, does speak for itself.
Yeah, I think it's akin to like, a team's kicker gets hurt and they make like the safety run out there, like we saw with the Chiefs earlier this year. Take the field goal. Doesn't mean it's going to go well, but no, there's no rule that says, oh, you don't have a kicker, now you lose the extra point, or you have to use the punter or something like that. So to me, it's more like I said, I fully was prepared to go. I don't have Josh Allen. I don't carry a backup quarterback because I prefer to have more depth at the skill positions. Let's see what happens. If I lose, I lose. I'm not worried in terms of the season because it's not the playoffs. Obviously it didn't matter, but you're right. Dropping Tua, I was like, ooh, I'll take Tua.
If I were to ding myself on one, I am fully redeemed on the Njoku draft pick, for the record.
Yes, you are. Yes, you deserve lots of
redeemed.
credit for that. I was very wrong.
But one,
as he's now out a month.
Took him in the 4th, but one major fail this season was dropping Tua just in time for you to pick him. When if I had looked even 1 week ahead, I would have realized you needed someone. I would have realized I did realize he was going to be healthy again. And you're a freaking Miami nut. I knew it, and I didn't catch it. It didn't end up happening.
No, it didn't matter. I mean, it would have made it closer. I was watching the Niner game. And, that was the only game I had on in the afternoon window. And when MVS catches the long touchdown, I was very unhappy because I went, oh no, this is exactly what Wagner needs. Some like 60-yard touchdown. There's a whole second half to play. If he gets another touchdown, all of a sudden it becomes close. I was definitely concerned because Andrews had effectively done nothing. One point he was wide open in the end zone. Lamar didn't even look at him. So I was definitely worried that I
was sort of seeing a glimmer of hope. He was putting up a 0. Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I played down 2 guys. Because of how that went.
You had 2 different players blow up for 30 points, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did. It was, Kenneth Walker went off. He had a long, big, late touchdown run to kind of blow his stats up to 30 points. And then Chase had a huge game, had that huge long touchdown late in the game to seal it. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely benefited from those late, late game performances because there's definitely a chance where if I don't get one of those or something breaks a little different, right? McCaffrey gets a touchdown or something, this is a completely different matchup. And it was one of your better weeks from a coach rating perspective in terms of maximum points played. You need to work on that one. You're second. I
don't think I do. Last. I think the weeks where my bench has blown up, I will stand by this, and I know LaMagna feels the same way, are primarily the weeks where the people who ended up blowing up were full-blown C-Mac is a game-time decision, or Herbert blowing up out of nowhere when both of them, him and Montgomery, were playing for the Bears, and no owner in their right mind would have played Herbert over Montgomery going into it.
Yeah, no, certainly. I'm sure that shakes out if you, if you break it down and you take a look at it in that way. Just doing a quick reconnaissance. I don't know that that's entirely true, but I'll take your word for it.
And Taysom Hill getting 4 touchdowns.
Oh yeah.
The Taysom Hill game for 41 points or something like that.
Yeah, the Taysom Hill game for sure. That nobody, that always happens once or twice a year. The Saints
went ahead and immediately forgot about him the moment that game was over. What the flying fuck?
It's Taysom Hill. Okay, he does it once or twice a
Taysom
year.
Hill, quadruple threat. Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, the future of the National Football League. Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, the runner, receiver, quarterback, tight end. Taysom Hill.
Okay, I can't wait for Sean
Mormon.
Payton to.
He gets his own planet.
Okay, I can't wait for Sean Payton to come into the league, take over the Chargers, and trade for Taysom Hill. I can't wait and tank Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler's fantasy value. That has next season written totally all over it. It doesn't matter the position. Taysom Hill just anywhere near the field. Just Taysom Hill on the roster is a problem.
We'll
You
see
never know what's going to happen.
I have moderately high hopes that he's playing the Raiders, and we'll see how they use him.
Okay, I don't know.
Now that Njoku's hurt.
Well, yeah. Who knows with Njoku? So looking ahead here, halfway through the season, it sounds like you're pretty confident you're going to win your division, which I think you should be. I think as long as you don't have some pretty crazy luck, most weeks you're gonna make the playoffs and at least be the 3 seed. But any other second half predictions you look at, see any of these other fringe teams? Should they make a trade? Should they not? Someone like Drew, who has elite running backs.
I'm glad you asked, and I have to say, the one team that has been surprising in how close it has gotten to that successful threshold is Jacob's team. If any team in our league were both able to trade, had value to trade away, but also was a good customer. Again, like you mentioned before, the problem is there's almost no elite players in the bottom half of our league. But if there is any talent or anybody blows up one week and they become worthy of trade value, Jacobs is who I would think should be a consumer of that of those trades. He's not had the best season. I don't see. He's 3-4, but he's been really close. And I think in the same way that my team is better than it looks, his team is better than it looks.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has had some up and down results for sure. It's had some pretty terrible weeks. It's had some pretty good weeks. It's interesting. He's got a lot of ammunition, mostly picks from me.
If you look back at week one.
Yeah. No, week one was really close. He had a lot of bad luck, really close. It was, he obviously, Chase had a huge game. Herbert had a huge game. Swift had a huge game. He really almost pulled it off. And it was really, really tight. We both played fairly strong lineups when you break it all down. But it was a situation, I think, for him, is if he decides to go all in or to try to boost his team, he has the ammunition. He has lots of picks, right? You just look, he's got a bunch of early picks. I know he's focused on 2023, as he should be, but at the same time, he's got Dameon Pierce
to make a deep playoff run this year.
Yeah, he is. He probably needs a couple of upgrades or players to really perform really well in the second half, but it's definitely a sneaky good team. I could see this team making the playoffs. If it does that, I think every team in my division will make the playoffs, which will speak to the strength of that division as well as the weakness of every other of the other two divisions.
I regretfully agree with that assessment. Your guys' division is far and away ahead this year. I'm surprised that our division has been less competitive than I expected, but at the same time, I'm grateful because the way my team has been playing, I don't deserve to be winning the division, and I am.
Yeah, your division is, when you look at points for, you have you average 24 more points a game than the next team in your division. So forget records. On the field, in terms of average week performance, it's not competitive. It's not close. So I think the records are deceiving in your division. And similarly for Joe, it's 23 points between him and the next highest scoring team, and that's Bodson, who's 1-6. So Joe has a much bigger lead, in part because Manny's had some bad luck with Kamara and things like that. But I think going forward in the second half of the season, I'm curious to see, does someone like Drew or Jacobs, right, or maybe one of these other teams who's in a weaker division, cobble together enough wins and go, oh, maybe I can make a trade that maybe are they angling to be the seventh best team and try to win the consolation bracket, or maybe in the playoffs, or Drew, who has, to me, that's the team that if anyone should be all in, should be him. He has Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler. I mean, if he just upgraded at quarterback and one receiver, he would be immediately competitive with the
We
best
talked a
teams.
little bit about the old Red Rocket earlier this
Yep.
in this pod,
Yeah.
and I think if depending now that he's been named the starter, even with Jameis supposedly healthy again in New Orleans, if Dalton becomes competitive this weekend, I'm not giving him up before this weekend. I don't have anyone else, but if now I'm really not in the position of being a seller of players because I am making my own attempt at a playoff run this year. But if Jacobs is out there and is interested in Andy Dalton after this weekend, that is an upgrade that I think could take Jacobs from a second tier team to a first tier team. Maybe against my own interest, I'm not sure.
Or Tua.
Or Tua
Tua's
for me.
available.
Yeah,
I mean, but that's the thing, right?
he's available and he's a bowl of mashed potatoes.
Yeah. Who knows what's going on upstairs with him, but
Future
I mean,
Herschel
that's the
Walker.
thing.
Future Herschel Walker.
I don't know about that. I don't know that he's going to drive multiple women to get an
That's
abortion.
true.
Right?
That's a good point.
My God, that's
Yeah.
really he's
Another
really.
one today.
Yeah, and I heard it was. Is this the second or the third now?
Second, I think. Maybe
Second,
third.
yeah, second. No, it was second. There was like a press conference or something. Anytime we see Gloria Allred is out there, I'm like, okay, all right, we know what's coming. Yeah, we all know what we're getting. That's a whole other can of worms. I guess we'll be happy to be done with all of that in a few weeks. No more of these. You're in Southern California, maybe a little different than what it's like here, but I am very much tired of seeing Charlie Crist and DeSantis and Rubio and Val Deming, political ads nonstop.
So we don't have regular cable here in the West Coast Fantasy headquarters.
Okay.
We don't. Sorry, Jacobs. And Joe. We don't have regular cable, but I will tell you where was I recently? Oh, I did a work trip to Vegas, and we had the news on at all times in our office. And the number of political ads, Nevada is just like Florida, except actually competitive. And holy shit, the number of every single ad was a political ad.
Yeah. It's hard. Our HOA comes with a fairly good cable package, has HBO and for free, part of the HOA fee. So there's no additional cost to have it. So if we don't, we might as well have it. And you'll be watching live television, and every break all day long is just one ad after another for all of all of the big races here, Senate and governor. I mean, it is just, at this point, if someone hasn't made up their mind, I don't think they're going to be swayed by another ad about, whether or not someone is tough on crime or pro-abortion or anti-abortion. I just don't think it's going to matter, at this point.
This isn't in our weekly rundown, but I do want to give the good viewers at home the hot Lowell car takes. Off the top of your head, from East Coast to West Coast, competitive races only, who's going to win? Not who do you want. This is not an endorsement or an opinion. Who are you handicapping from East Coast to West Coast?
Well, I mean, to break that, I think the most interesting race to me of all the races is Pennsylvania, because, you have carpetbagging Dr. Oz with his.
Who's a quack and a lunatic.
Right. He's a total loon. Okay. Right. At least he can form full sentences, unlike Herschel Walker. Well, and obviously Fetterman is a whole other thing. The whole issue with the interview and the reading of the questions and whether or not, that was fair or not, and how it was edited. And, then the debate where he opens with, hello, good night, everyone, and whether that was supposed to be a joke or a flub, who knows? That to me is just very interesting. I don't know what you can make of that. Here's Fetterman, who has very generally well liked and has had a very successful political career in that state. Obviously, the stroke completely changes who he is and what you can think of him as a politician, as a senator. That's from a massive state. How do you? And then you have the loon on the other side. I'm really curious what happens there. I don't know what how it's going to play.
I
It's
do
very
think that
close.
interview and that debate might have changed that race, but I also
Yep.
think there's a not insignificant number of people who are not really persuadable either, who don't want whoever it is they don't want, they're going to vote based on who they don't want.
Well, I think that's what happens often, and especially now, is people vote for the person they don't, or
Yeah.
they vote against who they don't like rather than who they want.
Yes.
It's it's not even a choice of a lesser of two evils, which I think prior elections,
It's just like a
could
fear-based
be.
rejection of the other.
Yeah, it's just I hate them because they're red or they're blue or they're whatever XYZ
Black from New
characteristic.
Jersey. Yeah.
Well, right, or whatever their stance is. That's just people are. I just doesn't
So what
matter,
about in
right?
Florida? Who's gonna run away with all these hot ticket ones?
No, I mean I think DeSantis and Rubio will win. I don't. I think the state, for as much as people made an issue of all the people from the Northeast who moved down during COVID, actually Republican registrations outpaced Democratic ones.
By a lot.
Yeah, by a significant amount. Number one. Number two, DeSantis' approval rating is high enough where he's going to win. He'll beat Chris. Um, and for Rubio and Demings, I just don't think she has enough cachet to where it moves the needle. And frankly, I don't think a lot of people are tuning in to watch those debates in the state of Florida. I think Florida is one of those states where if you're going to vote red or blue because that's what you do. There's not a lot of people here who go, what do I want to do today? Who do I like? So I think it'll be pretty straightforward. Whereas Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, those are a little more, I think, of the toss-up variety. I think the Republicans will carry the House. The Senate, I don't know. It really depends. It could be 50-50. It could be Democrats could pick up a seat. It's going to be really tight. Republicans could pick up the majority there. I think that one's
Yeah,
harder
I
to
think the
call
Senate is a
2 weeks
tougher
out.
map for Republicans. The one
Yeah.
they have the most chance of winning is probably Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
even more than Pennsylvania.
Yep.
But then they also stand to lose likely the one in Pennsylvania
Mm-hmm.
from what they have now. I think
Yeah.
Nevada won't be touched, won't
No.
won't flip. I think Arizona likely won't flip.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to watch Wisconsin.
Mm.
It is likely a Republican hold, but possible flip outside chance. And then I believe it's New Hampshire, I think, where there's the possibility of a Republican flip, but unlikely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's difficult, right? The last what 3 or 4 election cycles, the pre-election polls have undercounted or underrepresented Republican votes by roughly 2 to 3%, depending on the poll and the cycle. So if you add that into the margin of error, I think a lot of these races become very, very tight.
Yeah.
But have the pollsters improve? Is that a trend that you can depend on? I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be close on the Senate. I could very easily see a split Congress. Red House, blue Senate, and 2 years of nothing because of it, right? Each side doing its own committees and investigations and lodging accusations and nothing really happening. I think that's unfortunately what could be the result. But no, I'm at least we don't have the British problem of a head of lettuce outliving or serving the prime minister, right? I mean, we don't have that issue. So at least for
Speaking
now,
of
we
the
still have
UK and the
democracy.
additional UK-based NFL games this year,
Mm-hmm.
possibly to tie us out.
And German, we have a German game as
We
well
have a
coming
German
up.
game. Good for you, Evan. Maybe you can go see it. I would like to put in a shameless plug for Catherine's wonderful employer and Amazon Prime Video. In addition to the phenomenal broadcast that we've seen this year on Thursday Night Football, which is a transformational event in the history of broadcasting, we're also about to get the first ever Black Friday NFL game, which is pandering and commercialized as crap. Hello?
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. I got someone.
That's all right.
Who is it? Okay, I'm actually on a work call. It's oh, I voted for her, but she hasn't voted yet. But no, thank you. No, you're outside. Thank you. Sorry about the delay. Funny enough, it was our first ever in this whole election cycle campaign canvasser, and it was for a local city council race.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. Huh. That's a new one. We didn't get any of those. We haven't had any of those. Maybe they'll come with the trick or treaters on Monday.
Trick or treat.
I don't know.
About?
Yeah, that's worst ways to campaign, I guess. So, well, I look forward to the second half of the season. I would expect to see you in the playoffs. So, barring some additional terrible luck, but you'll be there.
I hope so, and I hope everyone but Paul. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. If I had to handicap, what do we have? 6 in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think 5 are pretty clear. So
we have a total of 6, correct?
We have totally 6. I think it's that so 6th spot to me.
You, me, Richmond, Jacobs, who's 4th right now?
No, LaMagna's 4th.
Well, you, me, Richmond,
LaMagna. Drew is the 5th ranked team, and I think you'll get in. Those running backs are more than enough.
Manny, maybe. Evan, maybe. I think Jacobs.
I think it depends. Yeah, I don't think Jacobs will make a run. To me, I don't think it'll be Jacobs. I think that team. I don't see it. I think more likely Manny or Kirshner or someone will just because inevitably Jacobs is still going to have to play Matt, Drew, and I one more time. So he'd have to probably win 2, if not all 3 of those to get in, because someone like Manny could go 2-1 in division, or Kirshner, go 2-1 or even 3-0 in the division at the end of the year and get in at like 7-7, or 8-6. I think for it, that's the hard thing is it's really hard to get all those teams in from one division unless they all just run through the rest of the league. And I just don't see that with Jacob's team, but you never know. I think right now 4 or 5 teams are probably pretty solid, and it's just a matter of jockeying for position. And maybe there's a waiver pickup or a trade, so no one sees coming that makes a big shift. But it should be fun. I'm excited.
Thank you for your time in the pod, and go take.
Thank you for your time. I don't know about that. I'm sure I'm going to get that took longer than you said it would. So, I'll get one of those
right now.
Exactly. Well, you're good. She's training for a marathon. I've got a
Marine Corps marathon this weekend.
So we'll enjoy. Best of luck to her in the race, and I'll see you in January. Well, I guess December for the playoffs.
See you in December.